Rain drummed on the roof of the house under construction on Secor Road as Leon Harris put down his hammer and glanced at his watch. It was 5:30 on a Friday evening, a time when most people were planning their weekends, meeting friends, or having family dinners. Leon was planning the same thing he had planned every weekend for the past 7 years: work. "Leon, enough already!" The voice of Rick Morrison, his business partner, came from behind him. "You're turning into a ghost." "When was the last time you took a vacation?" Leon didn't turn around, continuing to hammer nails into the floorboard. His movements were precise, mechanical, the result of decades of experience and the last 7 years of trying to drown his thoughts in work. "I don't need a vacation," he muttered. Rick moved closer, his work boots clattering loudly on the plywood floor. A 43-year-old man with graying temples, he had known Leon before the tragedy. He had known him when he laughed, when he planned a future with Sarah, when he talked about the children they wanted. "Listen, I have train tickets to Chicago for tomorrow. My wife bought them for a concert, but her mother got sick. Go, 3 days. Visit museums, eat decent food, look at people." Leon finally turned around. His face, once open and friendly, now bore the mark of constant fatigue. The gray eyes that Sarah called the color of the winter sky had become dull. "Rick, I'm serious, don't. And I'm serious when I say that if you don't take these tickets, I'll hire someone else. You work 7 days a week, 14 hours a day. That's not normal." The house on Elm Street, which Leon once shared with Sarah, was quiet in the evening. Too quiet. He sat in the kitchen with a bottle of beer in his hands, looking at the tickets Rick had forced into his pocket. The train was leaving at 8:30 a.m. The photo of him and Sarah at Lake Erie, taken a month before the accident, still hung on the refrigerator. Sarah was laughing, her head thrown back, her chestnut hair blowing in the wind. Leon had his arm around her shoulders, and they both looked happy. Real. The accident happened on a rainy November evening 7 years ago. Sarah was driving home from work on Highway 23 when a truck skidded on the slippery road. The police report was brief and ruthless. High-speed collision, instant death, car completely burned. Closed casket at the funeral. Leon got up at 5 in the morning, sleep-deprived. He packed a small bag, left the house keys with his neighbor Mrs. Chen, and drove to the train station, still undecided about whether he would go. The train arrived in Chicago at 11:30. Leon checked into an inexpensive hotel near Millennium Park and spent the first day wandering aimlessly through the streets. The city pulsated with life. People hurried along the sidewalks, laughed in cafes, hugged on street corners. It all seemed unreal to him, like a movie he was watching through thick glass. On the second day, he went into a small cafe on State Street. The place was cozy, with wooden tables and the smell of fresh pastries. Leon ordered coffee and a sandwich, sat by the window, and watched the passers-by. That's when he saw her. The woman was sitting at a table in the far corner, her back to him. But her profile, the tilt of her head, the way she adjusted her hair, everything was painfully familiar. Shoulder-length brown hair, exactly the same color as Sarah's. The same graceful neck, the same way of holding a cup of coffee with both hands. Leon's heart stopped. The woman turned to say something to her companion, and Leon saw her face in profile. Her nose, her lips, the line of her chin, everything was identical to Sarah's. But that was impossible. Sarah had been dead for 7 years. He had seen the accident, attended the funeral, visited her grave every Sunday. The man she was sitting with turned to call the waiter, and Leon almost fell off his chair. Malcolm Thorne, his best friend from college, the best man at their wedding, the man who had held him by the shoulders when he wept at Sarah's funeral. Malcolm looked good, tanned, wearing an expensive shirt with an expensive watch on his wrist. He was smiling at a woman, and she was smiling back. Intimately, tenderly, like lovers. Leon couldn't breathe. His hands were shaking so badly that he spilled coffee on the table. The woman turned again, and for a moment their eyes met across the cafe. Brown eyes. The same brown eyes as Sarah's. The woman frowned, as if trying to remember something, but Malcolm said something to her and she turned away. They got up. Malcolm left the money on the table, and they headed for the exit. Leon tried to get up and follow them, but his legs wouldn't hold him. He watched through the window as they got into a dark BMW and drove away. The license plate was from Illinois, but he didn't have time to see the numbers. In his hotel room, Leon sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Logic told him it was a coincidence, a figment of his imagination. 7 years of grief could play tricks on the mind. Maybe he just wanted to see Sarah so badly that his brain created an illusion. But he knew for sure it was Malcolm. And the way the woman looked at him, as if trying to remember, Leon took out his phone and dialed Malcolm's number. After 4 rings, the answering machine kicked in. "Hi, this is Malcolm." "Leave a message." "Malcolm, it's Leon. I'm in Chicago. I need to talk to you. Call me back." He didn't call back. Leon didn't sleep all night. He lay in his hotel room, staring at the ceiling, trying to find a rational explanation for what he had seen. By morning, he had made up his mind. He had to know the truth, whatever it was. At 8 o'clock, he went down to the hotel reception desk, where a young guy with a name tag that said Jason was yawning over his coffee. "Excuse me, I need some advice. Where can I find a private investigator in Chicago?" Jason raised an eyebrow, but smiled professionally. That's not a question we get very often from tourists. But we have a directory. Or try the internet, the online yellow pages. Half an hour later, Leon was sitting in the hotel lobby with his laptop, browsing through lists of private investigators. Most of the websites looked cheap, with photos of muscular men in sunglasses or elderly women with stern faces. But one website caught his attention with its simplicity. Thomas Winter. Private investigations. Former Chicago police detective. Specializing in missing persons and family matters. Leon called the number listed. "Winter here," a raspy voice answered after the second ring. "Good afternoon. My name is Leon Harris. I need the help of a private investigator." "Where are you located?" "At a hotel on Michigan Avenue." "Can you come to my office in an hour? The address is on the website." Thomas Winter's office was located in an old brick building on the north side, on the 3rd floor without an elevator. Leon climbed the creaky stairs, passing the offices of an accounting firm and a law firm. The frosted glass door with the sign T. Winter, Private Investigations, was slightly ajar. Leon knocked and entered. Thomas Winter turned out to be a man of 52, with graying hair and tired brown eyes. He sat at an old wooden desk littered with folders and photographs. The office was small but neat, bookshelves with legal literature, framed photographs on the wall, a coffee maker in the corner. "Have a seat, Mr. Harris." "Coffee?" "Thanks." Leon sat down in a worn leather chair across from the desk. Winter poured 2 cups of coffee and looked intently at Leon. 22 years with the Chicago Police Department, the last 10 in private practice. I've seen a lot of strange stories. Tell me yours. Leon took a deep breath. 7 years ago, my wife died in a car accident. Yesterday, I saw her in a cafe here in Chicago with my best friend. Winter's expression didn't change. He just leaned forward slightly. Tell me more. Leon told the whole story, from Sarah's death to yesterday's meeting at the cafe. Winter took notes in his notebook, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Do you have a photo of your wife? Leon took out his phone and showed Winter a photo of Sarah. Winter studied it carefully. And your friend Malcolm? Leon showed him a few more photos from various meetings. What documents do you have regarding your wife's death? The death certificate, the police report on the accident. They're all at home in Toledo. Winter put down his notebook. Mr. Harris, I'm not going to lie to you. What you're telling me sounds unusual. Maybe it was just a woman who looked very similar. Maybe grief is playing tricks on your perception. But you have a right to know the truth. How much will it cost? $300 a day, plus expenses. I'll start with the simple things. I'll check if there's a woman in Chicago who looks like your wife and lives with a man who looks like your friend. If I find anything concrete, we'll continue. Leon nodded. Get started. The next day, Winter called at 10:30 in the morning. Mr. Harris, I need to meet with you. Not over the phone. They met at the same cafe on State Street where Leon had first seen the woman. Winter arrived with a thick folder. I found them, he said without preamble. They live in a condominium on Lincoln Park. The woman is registered as Lisa Cohen, 39 years old. The man is Malcolm Thorne, 46 years old. They've been living together for 6 years. Leon felt the world around him sway. Is this really her? Winter opened the folder and laid out several telephoto lens photos on the table. Sarah, or Lisa, was leaving an expensive grocery store. Sarah was getting into a BMW. Sarah and Malcolm were hugging near a cafe. The resemblance is striking, Winter said. But there are differences. Different haircut. She's lost weight. She wears contact lenses, green instead of brown. But the facial features. It's her, Leon whispered, looking at the photos. It's definitely her. That scar on her arm from an iron burn when she was 10. That mole on her neck. It's Sarah. Winter lit a cigarette, even though smoking was prohibited in the cafe, but the waitress didn't pay any attention. Mr. Harris, if this is indeed your wife, then we have a case of insurance fraud, document forgery, and possibly something else. Did you receive insurance payments after her death? Yes, $250,000. I spent it on paying off the mortgage and on charity. I couldn't touch that money. What about Malcolm? Leon tried to remember. He helped me with the paperwork after the funeral. He worked for an insurance company and knew the procedure. He said he wanted to help me get through all the red tape. How much insurance was on your wife? $500,000. Malcolm insisted we take out large policies when we got married. He said it was wise. Winter wrote down the figure. So if your wife is alive, someone has fraudulently received $500,000. Leon felt anger rising in his chest, mixed with pain and disbelief. How is that possible? I saw the police report. It said she died instantly. Her body burned. I checked the police archives. Winter took out a few more documents. The accident did happen, but the victim was identified by documents found in the car and dental records. If your wife had forged her dental records in advance or replaced them, but then who died in that car? Good question. Maybe a homeless woman of similar build, maybe someone no one was looking for. Dozens of unidentified bodies remain in the Cook County morgue every year. Leon stood up and paced around the cafe, trying to process the information. People at neighboring tables continued their conversations, laughing and drinking coffee. Their world had not collapsed. What did you find out about their life here? Lisa Cohen works as a manager at an art gallery. Malcolm is an independent insurance consultant. They have a joint bank account. They travel. They buy expensive things. They live like a wealthy couple. With my money, Leon whispered. With your money and the insurance company's money. Mr. Harris, if you want, I can continue the investigation and find out all the details. But I must warn you, what we discover may be even more painful. Leon returned to the table and sat down. I need to know the whole truth. All of it. All right. One more day of work, and I'll be able to give you the full picture. That evening, Leon sat in his hotel room, holding photos of Sarah, Lisa. The woman he had loved and mourned for 7 years was alive. She was living 2 hours away from him with his best friend, spending the money she had received for her fake death. He tried to imagine that November evening 7 years ago. Sarah said she would be late from work. She called around 6 and said she was on her way home. The next call was from the police, an accident on Highway 23. But now he understood. It wasn't the last conversation he would have with his wife. It was a conversation with a woman who was planning to disappear, leaving him in grief and loneliness. Malcolm arrived at the hospital half an hour after the police call. He hugged Leon, cried with him, and helped arrange the funeral. What an act it was. The phone rang. Winter. Mr. Harris, I have information you need to hear in person. Can you come to the office tomorrow at 9 in the morning? What did you find? Tomorrow, Mr. Harris. Believe me, it's better to discuss it face to face. Leon didn't sleep that night either. He looked at the lights of Chicago outside the window and tried to figure out what other secrets tomorrow would bring. The next morning, Leon arrived at Winter's office at 9 o'clock sharp. The detective looked tired, as if he had been up all night studying documents. There were stacks of papers, photographs, and printouts on his desk. Have a seat, Mr. Harris. What I'm about to tell you won't be easy to hear. Winter opened a thick folder and took out several documents. I conducted a thorough investigation of your wife's financial records for the year prior to her death. The picture that emerged is a sad one. He placed bank statements in front of Leon. 8 months before the accident, Sarah began making large cash withdrawals. $500 here, $700 there. At first, it was rare, then almost every day. In 6 months, she withdrew more than $30,000 from your joint accounts. Leon took the statements. The dates and amounts blurred before his eyes, but he recognized Sarah's signature. Where did the money go? Casinos. I found recordings from the security cameras at Holloway Casino in Toledo. Sarah was a regular there. Blackjack mostly. She played big and lost constantly. Winter took out another folder. But that was just the beginning. She took out loans. First from the bank, using the house as collateral. Then from private lenders. By the time of the accident, the debt was almost $200,000, and the lenders started making threats. $200,000, Leon whispered. I didn't know anything. She hid it very well. A separate mailbox for bank letters which she picked up before you came home. Meetings with lenders during the workday. You worked on construction sites from morning till night, and she took advantage of that. Winter lit a cigarette, despite the no smoking sign on the wall. And now for the most interesting part. A month before the accident, debt collectors approached Sarah. Tough guys. They threatened not only her, but you as well. That's when she came to Malcolm. How did you find out? Malcolm was careless. He registered a new LLC 3 weeks before the accident, a consulting firm that was supposed to receive the insurance payout as the deceased's business partner. Smart, but it leaves a trail. Winter took out the photos. Here they are a week before the accident, meeting at a motel on the outskirts of Toledo. Not a romantic rendezvous, a business meeting, planning the details. In the blurry photos, Leon recognized Sarah and Malcolm leaning over some papers at a table in a cheap motel room. The plan was simple, but effective. On the night of the accident, Sarah met a homeless woman about her age and build. The woman died of a heroin overdose, most likely accidental. Sarah took the body, put her documents and driver's license in the car, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire. Leon felt nauseous. While the police were investigating the accident, Malcolm was filling out the insurance paperwork. As an agent for the company, he had access to all the databases. He forged dental records and medical records. When it came time for identification, everything matched, and Sarah? She left for Chicago by bus that same night. Malcolm arrived a week after the funeral, supposedly to help you with the paperwork. In reality, it was to collect his share of the money and reunite with his accomplice. Winter put down the documents and looked at Leon. Mr. Harris, over 7 years, they received $500,000 in insurance money, plus what was left in your joint accounts. They live in a condo worth $300,000, drive cars worth $70,000 each, and vacation in Europe twice a year. Leon stood up and walked to the window. It was drizzling outside, and people were hurrying along under their umbrellas. The ordinary lives of ordinary people who had no idea that their loved ones were capable of such betrayal. What do you recommend? Go to the police. We have enough evidence to open a criminal case. Fraud, forgery, concealment of a crime. What if I want to talk to them first? Winter shook his head. I don't recommend it. They may go into hiding. They have money and connections. I need to hear it from them. I need to understand why. Then I'll go with you. As a witness. 2 hours later, they were standing in front of an expensive residential complex in Lincoln Park. Winter checked the equipment for recording the conversation. Remember, don't threaten physical violence. Anything you say can be used against you. Leon pressed the intercom button. Apartment 12A. Yes? Sarah's voice. Lively, familiar, once beloved. Delivery, Leon lied. We didn't order anything. It's from Malcolm Thorne. A surprise for Lisa Cohen. Pause. Then the lock clicked. They went up to the 12th floor. The apartment door was ajar with a chain visible behind it. Leave it at the door, said a woman's voice. I need a signature. The chain clicked and the door opened. Sarah stood in the doorway in a silk robe, a cup of coffee in her hands. The same brown eyes, the same delicate nose, but her face was older, thinner. When she saw Leon, the cup fell from her hands and shattered on the marble floor. Leon, she whispered. Hello, dear. I missed you. Footsteps could be heard from the depths of the apartment. Malcolm appeared in an expensive tracksuit with a towel around his neck, apparently just back from the gym. Liz, who is this? My God. Surprise, said Leon, entering the apartment. Winter followed him. The apartment was luxurious. High ceilings, panoramic windows overlooking the lake, expensive furniture. Paintings hung on the walls, and photos of Sarah and Malcolm from various trips stood on the table. How did you find us? Sarah asked, retreating to the sofa. A private investigator. Thomas Winter, Leon nodded toward his companion. He's very knowledgeable about fraud. Malcolm tried to remain calm. Leon, I know this looks strange, but there's an explanation. An explanation? Leon laughed, but the laughter was full of pain. You want to explain how my dead wife came back to life and has been living with my best friend for 7 years? Sarah sat down on the sofa, wrapping her arms around her knees. Leon, I wanted to tell you. I wanted to so many times tell me what? That you're alive? Or that you stole $500,000? I was in debt, Sarah cried. They threatened to kill us both. I had no choice. You had no choice? Leon's voice grew louder. What about telling your husband? Asking for help? We could have worked it out together. You would never have understood. You've always been so righteous. Never took any risks, never gambled. Gambled? You call that gambling? Leon grabbed one of the photos from the table. Sarah and Malcolm on a beach somewhere in the Caribbean. While I was mourning you for 7 years, you were sunbathing on my money. Malcolm stood between them. Leon, calm down. Yes, we made a mistake, but we can fix it. Fix it? Leon turned to him. You were at my funeral. You held me by the shoulders while I cried. You helped me file the insurance claim, and all this time you knew. I wanted to help her. She was desperate. Help? Or get your share? Winter stood at the entrance, recording everything on a tape recorder. Malcolm noticed this. Hey, what's going on? Are you recording? Mr. Winter is gathering evidence for the police, Leon said. Fraud, forgery, faking her death. Sarah jumped up from the couch. The police! Leon, no. We can work this out. We'll give the money back. Give the money back? Will you give me back the 7 years of my life too? 7 years when I thought you were dead. Leon walked over to the window where photos of their trips together were displayed. Italy, France, Spain. With the money he had earned, with the money they had received for her fake death. You know what hurts the most? He said without turning around. It's not the money. It's not even that you're alive. It's that you let me suffer. For 7 years, I blamed myself. I thought that if I had asked you to stay home that night, you would still be alive. He turned around, and Sarah saw tears in his eyes. I went to a psychologist. I took antidepressants. I couldn't sleep in our bedroom. And you lived here, happy, and didn't even think to tell me that it wasn't my fault. Leon. Sarah took a step toward him, but he pulled away. Don't you dare. His voice turned cold. Don't you dare pretend you're sorry. If you were sorry, you would have found a way to tell me the truth years ago. Malcolm tried to take control of the situation. Listen, Leon. We're all adults here. We can resolve this civilly. Sarah will come back. We'll explain to the police that it was a mistake. A mistake? Leon turned to him. You call 7 years of deception a mistake? We panicked. Debts, threats, and me? Wasn't I your friend? Couldn't you have come and said, Leon, we have a problem. Help us. Malcolm lowered his eyes. It was easier that way. Easier. Leon laughed bitterly. Easier to steal $500,000 and leave a friend in hell for 7 years. Sarah started crying again. Leon, I know you hate me, but I loved you. I really did. Loved? Leon's voice became dangerously quiet. People you love don't cheat on you like that. People you love don't make you suffer. He moved very close to her. Do you know what I did on the anniversary of your death? I brought flowers to the cemetery, to an empty grave. I talked to a piece of marble thinking I was talking to you. Sarah sobbed. I wanted to tell you. When? When did you want to? A year ago? 2 years ago? Or this morning when you saw me at the door? Leon turned away from her and looked at Malcolm. And you were my best man. I considered you a brother. You helped me through the death of my parents. I trusted you more than myself. Leon, you have to understand. Understand what? That my best friend and my wife conspired to rob me and leave me to die of grief? The anger in Leon's voice grew. You know what? You deserve each other. 2 crooks, 2 liars. He headed for the exit, but stopped at the door. Just know this, I'm not going to let this go. You didn't just steal money, you stole my life, and you're going to pay for that. Leon, don't do anything stupid. Malcolm took a step toward him. Leon turned around, his face full of rage. Stupid? What do you think would be smart? Forgive? Forget? Let you continue to enjoy life on my money? We can fix everything. You can fix a broken faucet or a broken window. But what you did can't be fixed. Leon approached Malcolm, and Malcolm backed away. Do you know that I've been thinking about suicide for 7 years? I've tried 3 times. The last time was 2 years ago. Malcolm turned pale. Leon! Shut up! Leon shouted. Shut up and listen! You killed me 7 years ago. You killed my ability to trust, to love, to live normally. And you think I'm sorry will fix everything? He grabbed an expensive vase from the table and threw it at the wall. The vase shattered into pieces. This is what you've done to my life. You've smashed it to pieces, Sarah screamed and clung to Malcolm. Leon, stop! You're scaring me! Scaring you? Leon laughed. Do you know how scary it is to wake up every morning and remember that the person you love more than life itself is dead? Do you know how scary it is to live with the guilt of not being able to protect her? He walked over to the window and punched the glass. The glass cracked. Leon, stop it! Malcolm tried to stop him. Don't touch me! Leon pushed him so hard that Malcolm fell onto the sofa. Don't you dare touch me with your filthy hands! Winter approached. Mr. Harris, it's time to go. Yes, go. Leon turned to Sarah and Malcolm. But this isn't the end. It's only the beginning. You will pay for every day, every night, every tear. He headed for the exit but stopped at the door. And know this. I won't stop until justice is served, even if I have to do it myself. He didn't finish, but the threat hung in the air. Leon, don't do anything you'll regret, Sarah whispered. Regret? Leon looked at her one last time. The only thing I regret is not finding out the truth sooner. The door slammed behind them. After leaving Sarah and Malcolm's apartment, Leon couldn't remember how he got to the hotel. Winter tried to talk to him in the taxi, saying something about the need to go to the police immediately, but the detective's words came through as if through thick glass. Leon sat and watched the streets of Chicago fly by, and one thought kept spinning in his head. 7 years of his life had been stolen, and no one had paid for it. In the hotel room, Winter tried to persuade him to take legal action. Mr. Harris, we have all the evidence. The police will arrest them tonight. Fraud, forgery, they'll get real time. Leon nodded, but he wasn't listening. He was thinking about how Malcolm had hugged him at the funeral, how he had helped him choose a headstone, how he had said that Sarah would be glad to know that Leon wasn't alone. What a sophisticated cruelty it was. Promise me you won't do anything on your own, Winter insisted. They could be dangerous, Leon promised, even though he already knew he was lying. Winter left around 8 in the evening, saying he would take all the case files to the police tomorrow morning. Leon was left alone in the room, holding printouts of bank statements and photos of the happy couple on vacation. The money he earned working 14 hours a day on construction sites was spent on French restaurants and Caribbean resorts. He opened the minibar and downed a small bottle of whiskey in one gulp, then another. The alcohol did not dull the pain, but only intensified his rage. Sarah's voice echoed in his head. It was easier that way. Easier to steal from her husband and leave him to die of grief. Around midnight, Leon left the hotel and hailed a taxi. He knew the address, 1847 Lincoln Park, apartment 12A. During the ride, he thought about what he would say to them. Would he demand that they return all the money immediately? Would he force them to confess to the police? But the closer he got, the clearer it became that words would not help. 7 years ago, he buried an empty coffin. For 7 years, he couldn't enter their bedroom, couldn't throw away her things, brought flowers to her grave every anniversary. And she was alive, laughing with another man, spending his money. The security guard in the lobby was dozing behind the desk. Leon walked past him to the elevator. In his jacket pocket was a utility knife. He always carried it with him out of habit. Leon didn't plan to use it, but he could feel the cold weight of the metal through the fabric. On the 12th floor, he stopped in front of door 12A. Muffled voices came from behind the door. They weren't asleep, apparently discussing the day's meeting. Leon pressed the doorbell. Who's there? Malcolm's voice sounded wary. Concierge, we have a problem with the water pipes on your floor. A few seconds of silence, then the click of a lock. Malcolm opened the door but left the chain on. At this hour? We didn't order anything. Leon rammed the door with his shoulder. The chain broke and the door swung open. Malcolm flew backward and fell to the floor of the hallway. Leon entered the apartment and closed the door behind him. Leon, what are you doing? Malcolm tried to get up, holding his shoulder. What I should have done 7 years ago. Sarah ran out of the living room in her nightgown. When she saw Leon, she pressed herself against the wall. Leon, go away. We'll call the police. Call them. Tell them who you are. Leon took out a knife and opened the blade. The metal glinted in the light of the chandelier. You're crazy, Sarah whispered. Yes, 7 years ago, I went crazy with grief. Grief that you caused me. Malcolm tried to stand between them. Leon, put the knife down. We'll settle this peacefully. Peacefully? Leon laughed. How peacefully did you solve my problems when you faked my wife's death? He took a step toward Sarah. She tried to run to the bedroom, but tripped over the edge of the carpet and fell. Leon was on top of her, holding the knife in his raised hand. 7 years, Sarah. 7 years I thought you were dead. Leon, please. You know what I think? That you really should die. just like we planned 7 years ago." He swung, but Malcolm lunged at him from behind. Grabbing his knife-wielding arm, they fell to the floor, wrestling for the weapon. Sarah screamed, trying to crawl to the phone. Malcolm was stronger in the struggle, regular gym training versus the sedentary work of a contractor. He twisted Leon's arm and the knife fell to the floor. But Leon didn't give up. Rage gave him strength. He elbowed Malcolm in the stomach, freed himself, and grabbed the knife again. "Stop it!" Sarah shouted, picking up the phone. "I'm calling the police." Leon turned to her. In her eyes, he saw fear. Real, animal fear. The same fear he had felt every night for 7 years, waking up from nightmares about the accident. "Call them. But first, answer one question." He slowly approached her, knife at the ready. Malcolm tried to stand up but doubled over in pain. "Have you ever thought about me in these 7 years? Have you ever regretted leaving me in hell?" Sarah pressed her back against the wall, the phone trembling in her hands. "Leon, I thought about you every day." "You're lying," he shouted. "All you thought about was money and your new life." He brought the knife to her throat. The cold steel touched her skin. "Tell me the truth. For once in your life, tell me the truth. I was afraid to tell you. Afraid you wouldn't understand, afraid, or didn't want to share the money?" Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks. Both. "I'm sorry, Leon. I'm sorry." Something in her voice, in that "I'm sorry," sounded sincere. For a second, Leon's hand trembled and the knife moved away from her throat. 7 years too late for apologies. He pressed the blade against her neck again, this time harder. A thin red line appeared. "Leon, don't!" Malcolm tried to get up, but Leon turned to him. "One more step and I'll slit her throat right now." At that moment, something snapped in Leon's head. Maybe it was the drop of blood on the knife blade. Maybe it was the scent of Sarah's perfume, the same one she had worn 7 years ago. Or maybe it was just 7 years of pent-up pain exploding all at once. He stabbed her. Sarah screamed and tried to dodge, but the blade entered her shoulder. Blood splattered on the white wall. She fell to the floor, pressing her hand against the wound. "You should have died 7 years ago," Leon whispered, raising the knife for a second strike. Malcolm lunged at him, but it was too late. The blade entered Sarah's stomach, this time deeper. "No!" Malcolm pushed Leon away and fell to his knees next to Sarah. "Liz! Liz, hang on!" Blood spread across the marble floor. Sarah gasped for breath. Her face turned pale. Leon stood over them with a bloody knife in his hands, looking at what he had done. The rage was gone, leaving only emptiness. He felt no satisfaction, no relief, only a strange detachment, as if he were watching the events unfold from the sidelines. Malcolm grabbed the phone. 911? I need an ambulance. A woman has been stabbed. Address: 1847 Lincoln Park, apartment 12A. She's losing a lot of blood. Leon slowly sank into a chair, still holding the knife. Sarah was lying on the floor, and Malcolm was trying to stop the bleeding with a towel from the kitchen. The white fabric was quickly turning red. "Why?" Malcolm whispered, without looking up. "Why did you do it?" Leon didn't answer. He looked at the blood on his hands and thought about how Sarah was finally dying, just as planned 7 years ago. Police and ambulance sirens could be heard 10 minutes later. Malcolm didn't close the door, and medics rushed into the apartment with a stretcher and equipment. They were followed by police officers in bulletproof vests. "Drop your weapon! Hands behind your head!" Leon slowly put the knife on the table and raised his hands. One of the officers handcuffed him, while another read him his rights. The words sounded like a fog. The medics worked on Sarah quickly and professionally. An IV, an oxygen mask, pressure bandages on her wounds. One of them said something into his radio about a penetrating abdominal wound and possible internal organ damage. "Is she alive?" Malcolm asked the senior medic. "Alive, but in critical condition. She needs immediate surgery." Sarah was lifted onto a stretcher and quickly carried out of the apartment. Malcolm asked permission to go with her, and the police agreed. He was not a suspect, but a witness. Leon was led out of the building in handcuffs, under the flashes of his neighbor's cameras. The patrol car drove through Chicago at night to the station, and he looked out the window at the city lights and felt a strange calm. He had lived with pain for 7 years, and now there was no pain. There was only emptiness. At the station, he was placed in a holding cell. Gray walls, an iron bed, a toilet in the corner. Leon lay down on the thin mattress and closed his eyes. For the first time in 7 years, he fell asleep without sleeping pills. In the morning, Detective Anna Rodriguez came to see him. A woman of about 38, with tired brown eyes and a stern face. She sat down across from Leon at a metal table in the interrogation room. "Mr. Harris, you are charged with attempted murder. Do you wish to make a statement?" Leon looked at her and nodded. "I do." Rodriguez turned on the tape recorder and noted the date, time, and names of those present. "Tell me what happened last night at Lisa Cohen's apartment." "I tried to kill my wife." The detective raised an eyebrow. "Is Lisa Cohen your wife?" "Her real name is Sarah Harris. 7 years ago, she faked her death to collect insurance money." For the next 2 hours, Leon told the whole story. About Sarah's death, about the insurance, about how he accidentally saw her in a cafe, about Winter's investigation, about the confrontation, and the attempted murder. Rodriguez listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Do you have evidence of your wife's fraud?" "Private investigator Thomas Winter does. He was going to turn all the material over to the police today. We'll contact him." "But that doesn't justify attempted murder." "I'm not looking for excuses." Rodriguez studied his face. "Do you regret what you did?" Leon paused, thinking. "I regret not killing her. She should have died 7 years ago." "Mr. Harris, statements like that won't help you in court." "I don't care about court." After the interrogation, Rodriguez went to the hospital where Sarah was. The woman had undergone a 4-hour operation. Surgeons removed fragments of her spleen and sutured the damaged vessels. Her condition remained critical, but the doctors were cautiously optimistic. Malcolm sat in the hallway, not leaving the intensive care unit. "How is she?" Rodriguez asked. "Alive, still alive. The doctors say the next 24 hours will decide everything." "I need to record your statement about what happened." Malcolm recounted yesterday's confrontation, how Leon found out the truth, his threats, and the nighttime attack. He confirmed that Lisa had indeed been married to Leon before, but said he didn't know the details of her past. She said her husband died several years ago. "I didn't know she had faked his death." Rodriguez didn't believe him. Too many coincidences, too convenient a story. But Malcolm stuck to his line, and without additional evidence, he couldn't be charged. By evening, Winter had brought all the investigation materials to the police. Bank statements, photographs, insurance payment documents, a complete picture of a 7-year fraud. Rodriguez studied the documents in her office, sipping cold coffee. The case was complicated. On the one hand, there was Leon's obvious attempted murder. On the other, major fraud on the part of the victim and her accomplice. She called the prosecutor. "We have an interesting case. A man tried to kill his wife, who faked her death 7 years ago and stole $500,000 in insurance money. Is the victim alive? So far, yes, in critical condition. Then it's attempted murder. The suspect's motives are clear, but the law is the law. What about the victim's fraud? That's a separate case. If she survives, we'll prosecute her too." Rodriguez hung up and looked again at the crime scene photos. Blood on the floor, a bloody knife, the pale face of a woman on a stretcher. Another family destroyed by lies and betrayal. Sarah Harris spent 3 days in intensive care. Doctors fought for her life, while Detective Rodriguez gathered evidence in 2 related cases: attempted murder and large-scale insurance fraud. The materials provided by Thomas Winter revealed the extent of the deception, which had been going on for 7 years. On the fourth day, Sarah's condition stabilized. She was transferred to a regular ward under police guard. Rodriguez received permission from the doctors to conduct an interrogation, but they warned that the patient was still weak and the conversation should not last more than an hour. Sarah lay in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs and monitors. Her face was pale, but her eyes remained clear. When she saw the detective, she tried to sit up. "Don't move, Mrs. Harris. Or would you prefer me to call you Lisa Cohen?" Sarah. My name is Sarah Harris Rodriguez sat down on a chair next to the bed and turned on her tape recorder. "I'm Detective Anna Rodriguez, Chicago Police Department Homicide Division. Do you understand that you are under investigation for fraud?" Sarah nodded, staring at the ceiling. "Would you like to tell me what happened 7 years ago?" Over the next hour, Sarah told the whole story. She talked about how her gambling problems began, her mounting debts, and threats from creditors. She talked about how panic drove her to despair, and she turned to Malcolm for help. He said there was a way to solve all her problems in one fell swoop. Stage an accident, collect the insurance money, and disappear. It seemed like the only way out. "What about your husband? Didn't you think of telling him the truth?" Sarah closed her eyes. "Leon was perfect. Honest, decent. He would never have understood. He would never have agreed to the deception. So you decided to leave him in grief for 7 years? I thought he would forget me, find someone else, build a new life. But he didn't forget. No, he didn't forget." Rodriguez flipped through the pages of her notebook. "Tell me about the night of the staging." Sarah recounted how she and Malcolm found the body of a homeless woman who had died of an overdose in an abandoned building. How they put her in Sarah's car, doused her with gasoline, and set her on fire. How Malcolm used his connections at the insurance company to forge identification documents. Who received the insurance money? Formally, Leon. But part of it was transferred to the accounts of fictitious companies that Malcolm had created. In the end, we got about $400,000. And the other $100,000? Leon donated it to charity. He said he couldn't spend the money from my death on himself. Rodriguez wrote down this detail. Even in his grief, Leon remained an honest man, unlike his wife and best friend. After questioning Sarah, the detective went to the station where Malcolm was being held. Over the past few days, he had hired a lawyer and now refused to testify without him present. Lawyer Michael Sternberg was an expensive white-collar specialist. Malcolm had spent the stolen money on just such a specialist. "My client is willing to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence," Sternberg said. "Let's see what he has to offer," Rodriguez replied. Malcolm told a similar story, but presented himself in a more favorable light, as a man who was simply trying to help a desperate woman. Sarah came to me in a panic. She said that creditors were threatening not only her, but Leon as well. I couldn't let them hurt my best friend. "So you decided to rob him instead?" "It wasn't robbery. Leon received the insurance money legally. I just helped his wife get some of the money to solve her problems." The lawyer coughed. "My client admits his role in creating the fake documents, but claims he acted out of good intentions." Rodriguez smirked. "Good intentions don't explain 7 years of living the high life on stolen money." The investigation continued for another 2 weeks. Rodriguez and her team meticulously documented every aspect of the fraudulent scheme. Bank transfers, fictitious companies, forged documents, medical expert testimony about discrepancies in 7-year-old records. At the same time, a case was being prepared against Leon. Despite the circumstances, attempted murder remained a serious crime. The court-appointed lawyer tried to get him declared insane at the time of the crime, but Leon refused that defense. "I knew what I was doing," he told Rodriguez during another interrogation. "I wanted to kill her, and I almost did." The first court hearing took place a month after the incident. Sarah had been discharged from the hospital by then, but she was still having difficulty moving around. All 3 defendants sat in the courtroom. Leon in an orange prison jumpsuit, Sarah and Malcolm in suits but handcuffed. Prosecutor Jennifer Cole read the charges. Leon Harris is charged with attempted first-degree murder. Sarah Harris is charged with securities fraud, document forgery, death staging, and tax evasion. Malcolm Thorne is charged with aiding and abetting fraud, document forgery, and money laundering. Judge Robert King, an elderly man with a stern face, listened to all the charges. "This is an extremely unusual case," he said. "Crimes committed 7 years ago led to a crime committed a month ago. The court will consider all the circumstances." The trial lasted 3 months. Witnesses testified about Sarah's financial machinations, her gambling problems, and how Malcolm used his position to forge documents. Winter presented all the evidence he had gathered. Medical experts explained how the false identification had been carried out 7 years ago. The most difficult moment was Leon's own testimony. He spoke of 7 years of grief, of suicide attempts, of how the discovery of the truth had led him to attempt murder. "I'm not looking for excuses," he said, standing before the court. "I committed a crime. But I want everyone to understand that these people killed me 7 years ago. Not physically, but they killed the person I was. What I did in that apartment was the act of a dead man." Sarah's lawyer tried to portray her as a victim of circumstance, a woman driven to despair by debt and threats. "My client made a mistake, but she did not want to hurt her husband. She thought he could build a new, better life." Malcolm's lawyer insisted that his client acted out of friendship, trying to help a desperate woman, but Prosecutor Cole was relentless. "This was not a mistake or an act of desperation. It was a coldly planned criminal scheme that lasted 7 years. The defendants stole $500,000, ruined an innocent man's life, and mocked justice." The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the foreman read the verdict. In the case of Leon Harris, guilty of second-degree attempted murder, Judge King sentenced him to 8 years in prison. In the case of Sarah Harris, guilty on all counts, 12 years in prison. In the case of Malcolm Thorne, guilty on all counts, 10 years in prison. In addition, the court ordered Sarah and Malcolm to pay the full amount of damages, $500,000 plus interest and penalties. The total amount was over $800,000. After the verdict was announced, the three were taken away in different directions. Leon went to an Illinois state prison. Sarah went to a women's correctional facility. Malcolm went to a federal prison for white-collar crimes. Detective Rodriguez watched as they were taken away in prison buses. Another case closed. Another family destroyed by lies and betrayal. 6 months later, she received a letter from Leon in prison. "Detective Rodriguez, I want to thank you for your honest investigation. I know some people think my sentence is too lenient, others think it's too harsh. But I got what I deserved. For the first time in 7 years, I sleep peacefully. The truth has finally come out, and justice has prevailed. Even here in prison, I feel freer than I have in all these years." Winter received full payment for his work from the confiscated property of Sarah and Malcolm. In addition, several law firms offered him jobs based on his masterful investigation of the case. The insurance company that paid out the money 7 years ago filed a civil suit for damages. They were able to seize the criminal's apartment, cars, and bank accounts, but they were unable to recover the full amount of the damages. Too much money had been spent over years of luxurious living. Leon's house in Toledo was sold to pay his legal fees. The new owners demolished it and built a modern cottage on the site. The grave in the Toledo cemetery, which Leon had visited every Sunday for 7 years, was exhumed. The remains of the unknown woman were reburied in the section for unidentified bodies. The tombstone with Sarah's name was removed. The case received widespread media coverage. Journalists called it the most cruel betrayal of the decade. Documentaries told the story of a man who mourned his living wife for 7 years. Books analyzed the psychological aspects of such a long deception. But for those involved, the media hype was a distant backdrop. Leon read in the prison library, worked in the carpentry shop, and attended a psychological support group. For the first time in many years, he did not feel the need to blame himself for his wife's death, because his wife was not dead. Sarah spent her days in the prison laundry and in vocational training classes. She wrote letters to Leon, but he did not respond. Malcolm tried to appeal, but his lawyer said there was little chance. The evidence was too compelling. 2 years after the verdict, Sarah wrote a long letter to the local newspaper, publicly apologizing to her husband and everyone else affected by their deception. "I realize that no words can repair the damage done," she wrote. "Leon was the best person I knew, and I destroyed his life with my cowardice and greed. Every day in prison, I think about how things could have been different if I had been brave enough to tell him the truth 7 years ago." Leon read the letter in the prison library. He folded the newspaper, put it on the table, and went out into the yard. The apology came too late. Some things cannot be fixed. Some wounds cannot be healed. But for the first time in many years, he felt he could start building a future instead of just mourning the past.